Hello everyone, it is your resin 3D printing god, back again with another FDM review. Yes, this is the Creality Ender 5 S1, and it was sent to us by Creality to do a review. Let's take a look. So, as I stated, Creality sent us this machine to review, and let's just say that it's been quite a ride. In typical Creality fashion, with me, it seems to be, the Creality machines don't seem to like me very well. This one is par for the course. So, if you guys joined us for our live stream and unboxing of the Creality Ender 5 S1 with my son here to help build this machine, we had an issue where the hot end filament path was basically misaligned, essentially. And I thought it was a clog at first because I couldn't even get anything through the direct drive system and the hot end or nothing to even bring anything out. So I actually had to tear down the entire hot end and try and get it all back up and running. Thankfully, as I did that, I noticed that the coupler and the PTFE tube that's inside of the hot end, yes, this does have a PTFE tube in the hot end. We'll get to that more in a little bit, but so I ended up having to take apart basically the entire hot end, the Sprite extruder, and the newer hot end from Creality, and I ended up fixing it, and we finally started to get prints off of it. And let me tell you, after that issue, this machine printed beautifully for all of about 5 prints. Now, some of the prints I do have here, well, more or less just one. The other ones, they were either given to people already and gone. That's the downfall of doing these reviews. At least for me, is I never happen to keep most of the prints that I do. So I try and keep a couple around, and that's why I have a freshly finished one on the build plate here. But either way, let's get back to the whole what happened after 5 prints. So after 5 prints, the 6th print that I did was an exact print of this, which is an amazing print that came off of some Proto Pasta Blood of My Enemies. And I know my lighting is not doing the greatest job with this, but it came out amazingly. I absolutely love this filament. If anybody is interested in a like dark clear red filament, this is by far my favorite filament I have had in my hands from Proto Pasta. But I may be a little bit biased since I like black and red. However, back to the issue at hand. So I went to go and print another one of those so I can have it at my work. And unfortunately, I came back a few hours later thinking that, oh, my print is done. Well, it was done. But the first couple layers, I'd say anywhere up until about 20 layers, it was under extruding. And then it fixed itself out of the blue. And I thought, that's kind of strange. Let's try something else. So I put in some Arion gray filament, just your standard filament, nothing silk or anything like that. And I decided to try and print the bottle of ooze containers from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, because that is a project I've been wanting to work on for quite some time. And I had the gray on hand, so perfect storm. I can do the print, actually have it for a review, and that didn't happen. So again, we had the same issue where the first couple layers would lay down perfectly. I'd say the first and probably second layer would lay down perfectly. And then after that, major under extrusion till about 20 to 30 layers in, and then it started fixing itself out of the blue. The weirdest thing I have ever seen on a machine. And I went to the internet, of course, and tried to get a little bit of help because, I'll be honest, my expertise is in resin. I don't usually do a lot of FDM printing, but I still review them from time to time. And since this is a newer machine, maybe it was a user error. I don't know. But I tried to tick all the boxes that I would think that could be my fault. One of them being the profile that I'm using, which I use Simplified 3D. It is the same exact profile I have used for hundreds of machines that I have had in my hands of all different types and sizes, and it worked for every single one of them, no matter the configuration of the printer. So I kind of figured that wasn't it, so I decided to slice up a file and put it on my other machine back here, which is a completely different brand, completely different printer, and it worked without a hitch. So I'm like, okay, it's not that. I even decided to take out the SD card with the sliced G-code and put it on that machine that's hidden in the corner there, and it printed perfectly fine. So I said to myself, well, that limits out the profile, that limits out the SD card, because I usually replace the SD cards or USB drives as soon as I get these machines, just to rule out any issues with that being a probability. And then it's not the sliced file, because obviously it printed perfectly fine on the other machine. And so I was kind of at a loss. I didn't understand what was going on. I know it's a newer machine. It's got a lot of newer technology from Creality, and it's got a lot of newer parts that, as far as I can tell, no other printer from Creality has it, at least the hot end portion, besides the sprite extruder, which this one's a little bit different than the sprite extruder that you're used to on the Ender 3 S1. So with that being said, I fought with this thing vigorously for about, I don't know, a week and a half, and I was done with it. I've set it aside for about another week or so. Just let it be. Kind of clear my head and think about things, get some more information from people, try some things here and there, and it just was still coming up the same issue, where we would have an amazing first layer. Yeah, don't mind the divots there, that's from the bed. But then it would just turn to literal mesh. It would turn into nothing. And I couldn't understand it. It was printing beautifully. So I switched to another filament. Same exact thing. Over and over and over again. I could not explain it. And the fact that it would under extrude and then fix itself about 20 to 30 layers in just racked my mind, because I could not think what the issue was. It's not a clog nozzle, because the filament path was perfect. I checked that. And I even went as far as doing calibration for E-steps per suggestions from people on the internet. Now, I had never, ever done E-step calibrations in my entire life. In the 5 years of 3D printing and over hundreds of 3D FDM printers, I've never done E-step calibrations. I've never needed to do it until now. Now, I'm not saying that's fixing it. It came out exactly what it needed to be, maybe just slightly off, but it's not enough to where it would be like, oh my god, that was the issue. It definitely was not. So I calibrated the E-steps per the information that was provided on the TH3D Studio website, and everything was perfectly fine, and it still printed exactly the same. I reached out to Creality finally to try and get a fix. Maybe they know something that's up. Maybe it's a machine issue. Maybe it's a firmware issue. I have no idea. Sure enough, they thought, hey, maybe it is a firmware problem. So here's a unreleased version of a firmware that you can test out and get back to us and let us know if it worked. So I set it up. I started printing, and I was like, okay, maybe this is going to work. No, it didn't. So again, back to square one. And somebody just threw out an idea, well, maybe your Z lead screw is off a little bit. It's a possibility, but it looked straight to me. It looked fine. So I decided to take it apart and remove the Z lead screw. And for some reason, something in my mind popped and said, hey, why don't we take that Z lead screw and flip it upside down and put it back in there and check to see if the path is good and everything. Because obviously I've worked with a lot of Ender 3s in my past where you put the Z lead screw in and it's like this right up to where the coupler is. So you either have to have a spacer or you need to properly adjust your machine to get it plumb or level, whatever you want to call it. So the actual frame of the machine is not leveled at that point. Well, this thing is quite different. This is an H-style Cartesian printer. So these are pretty structurally rigid right out of the box. So I decided to notion that idea, put it together, and guess what? It fixed it. I have no idea why that was an issue. The Z lead screw is perfectly fine. I even lubed the Z lead screw before I even switched it up to try that because, hey, you never know. Maybe it just needed a little bit of lube. I don't know. Yeah, it just so happened to be that that was the issue. And it's been printing perfectly fine, as you can see here. Now, I will say that this printer, Creality had stated that it was a 10-minute build on their website. Now, I haven't checked to see if that's still up there on their website, but when I was building this, that's what they had stated on their website. So, I would say, even with me talking and my son helping me, and me knowing what I'm doing, it took a good 45 minutes. So let's subtract some talking about that. Let's subtract 15 minutes, okay? That's about a half-hour setup. That's pretty quick, even still, for something that you still have to partially assemble. But 10 minutes, that's pushing it. Even for somebody even more knowledgeable than myself, maybe even building these type of machines on a daily basis, I think that's still even a stretch. But anyway, that's beside the point. It's not really a huge issue. I just found it funny that they said it was 10-minute build. I don't see that happening in any way, shape, or form. I don't even think my machine back here was a 10-minute build, and that's pretty much 6 screws. So, either way. So, we ended up printing with this machine quite a bit, and I will tell you that after we got all the issues said and done, it has worked beautifully. Now, I will say that I did have one other issue, and this is probably my fault, because these machines have the newest Creality technology, and this machine is touted to be a very fast machine. It is made to go up to 250 millimeters a second. Now, I say it that way because I truly don't think in a stock form that this will be pushing 250 millimeters a second, no matter what kind of helping system it has on the machine stock, okay? I pushed this thing right out of the gate with a benchy, and I pushed it all the way up to 500% print speed, and it printed beautifully without a hitch. Now, it did end up knocking that benchy off as it started getting to the top because it's just way too fast for that, and the bed adhesion was just, it was okay at best because, you know, these build plates from Creality are not always the greatest. But either way, we ended up printing this Akuma print, and I left it on here just to show you guys how it looks. And I do have a secondary one, which I want to go back to the other error that I kind of had with this printer, and it was partially my fault. I do have a very small heater down here in my basement to maintain my resin printers during the winter season. So with this being pushed at 300% speed settings, and that heat being a consistent 72 to 75 degrees down here, yes, I keep it quite toasty down here. I have a feeling that the board kind of overheated because you're pushing the maximum limits when you're going over 200% on these boards. So the possibility of failures are just, they skyrocket. So what happened is we had a major layer shift, which makes me believe that it was the drivers just overheating on the X. So I had a major shift, and oddly enough, it started printing again. So it's still printed, but it just, the feet were here, and they were supposed to be over here. So yeah, it didn't really connect to the model, but the model still printed beautifully after that. So I let it run just to show you guys exactly what happened. And then I decided to reprint it, and I tuned it down to 200%, and I also tuned down the heat a little bit, so that way it's not as crazy on here, and it printed out the way that it was intended to. So I want to go ahead and show you a print that I did right after I did the flipping of the Z, and this is a little 8-bit cube that I found on, I think it was on Cults 3D. I'll have to link it down below. But this was printed at 250% print speed, excuse me. And it has looked amazing. Like, I am very, very impressed with the quality that this machine puts out. Now, this is the bottom layer with the support, so obviously that's only going to come out so good. But for a 0.4 nozzle and printing at the speed that it did, the quality that this machine output, wow. I'm pleasantly surprised that Creality has made a machine that actually prints very well and is very, very quick. Because if you guys saw on the live stream, I cranked this thing up, like I said, to 500%, and it was printing away perfect. The only thing that we had to do is maybe adjust the temps here and there, and it even showed the gradual temps and every single time that I bumped up the speed. And even if so, I actually do have that. I thought I got rid of it, but I got 2 more prints. So here's one that I printed at 500%. This little bunny rabbit, it is a test file on there. And again, we printed it in The Blood of My Enemies by Protopasta. But this one specifically is the Benchy, and as you can see, it destroyed the top because it knocked it off. It hit this, and it flung it right off the bed. Hopefully my camera can pick this up, but you can see the gradient on there. Let's try and get this to focus a little bit more. You can see the gradients between the times that I set the speed. So we started off at normal speed, 100%, then we cranked it up to 200, then 300, then 400, then 500, and then as I got up to the top, 500, I started noticing that it turned the filament to like a matte color. So it was still printing, but it was turning it to a different color. So I was like, all right, let's see what we can do. So I bumped up the temperature, I think it was either 5 or 10 degrees, and it fixed it, and it went back to its normal shine, I guess, or sheen, however you want to say that. But it printed pretty well for 500% at a Benchy. So I was thoroughly impressed, and I had a lot of hope for this machine. But again, we did run into a couple problems. So I'm just stating it's not necessarily a bad machine, but we just had some hiccups here and there, and I guess that's kind of par for the course for new machines. But even with a new machine, I expect at least 6 months of printing before I see any type of disaster. And if it is, it's usually a user error. You know, you're just kind of like, all right, well, I'm going to set this, and then it just destroys itself, and then it's a whole slew of problems after that. So, but other than that, it's been printing great. Like I said, this is the new Sunlu PLA Meta, which is insanely strong. This is new PLA, and I'm just going to show you guys. I'm going to try and close these legs as hard as I possibly can, and it will not break. And this is at 10% infill, so you can see the infill on there. But this printed amazingly, and in really, really good detail, too. Like, I barely see any layer lines. Now, I do get some ringing here and there, and that's understandable for the speed that I was printing at. Again, I was printing this at 300% speed. So to even have, like, these little tips on the hair and everything to come out, that is very, very impressive. I'm quite impressed with the quality that this machine can output for what it has. Now, going back to the whole hot end type thing, and I was talking earlier about the PTFE tube. Unfortunately, Creality states this as a 300 degree Celsius hot end, and I can see that being a possibility. However, this is PTFE lined, and there is a PTFE tube in it. So, with that being said, I don't really suggest doing that, at least not out of the box, without upgrading either the PTFE tube or maybe even changing the heat breakout entirely on this machine and actually turning it into an all-metal hot end. That would probably be more beneficial for the machine itself and just printing in general for the life of the machine. So you can do one of those two things right out of the gate. This is a very simple, straightforward hot end to disassemble. It's nothing special. It's probably took me all of 10 minutes to disassemble this entire thing and get it down to where I need it to be. But if you are printing with higher temp material, I will suggest either upgrading the PTFE tube or just upgrading the heat break to an all metal or bi-metal, whatever, something that is not a PTFE aligned heat break, because obviously, as you guys may or may not know, the PTFE tubes usually start breaking down around 235 degrees Celsius, and that's a consistent 235. So while you may be printing away at PETG all day long, yeah, that might be great, but at some point it will eventually fail on you, and then you're going to be pulling your hair out, trying to figure out what's going on, and it turns out that it's the PTFE tube all along. It's not a clog nozzle. It's not a clog in the hot end, or maybe it is because of the PTFE tube. So it's very hard to diagnose something like that. So if you have any type of printer that has a PTFE lined hot end, I do highly suggest upgrading that if you are going to print with anything beyond PLA. Even with TPU, I think most of the TPUs I printed with are usually hotter temperature. So yeah, basically anything beyond PLA, you want to try and upgrade that. So other than that, it's been, like I said, a great machine. Touchscreen is very, very nice, very active. The build quality of the machine, I've always liked the Ender 5 builds, and this one just takes it a step further. This machine has upgraded belts. Usually they just come with cheap belts. This one actually has Gates belts on it, so they're very, very robust. And, you know, they're going to maintain the life of the machine for as best as it possibly can. There are still some rollers on this, so it is not a Core XY or anything like that, even though it does look kind of crazy. It is still a Cartesian printer, just in a box style. So for those who don't know, the Ender 3 is a Cartesian printer. This is essentially an Ender 3, just a boxed enclosed, so it's a little more structurally rigid than an Ender 3. So I do highly suggest getting the Ender 5 over an Ender 3. Build volume wise, this is pretty much on par course for the Ender 5 and the Ender 5 Pro, which are 220 by 220, and this one is 280. So that's basically what it is. The hot end is, like I said, it is a newer hot end by Creality. It is a much higher end hot end than most of their other machines. It comes with the Sprite extruder. We do have a single 50-15 part cooling fan with a dual duct that comes around, which provides absolute adequate cooling for the print speeds that you can get this up to. There is a filament runout sensor on this as well, so you pretty much have all the bells and whistles. On top of that, to add all of this onto it, there is a auto leveling system. Not my personal favorite with the CR Touch. I am more of a capacitive sensor person, but hey, this one kind of works right now, so I hope that it stays that way and we don't have any other issues. But in, you know, typical fashion of the CR Touch and the BL Touch, the wires don't really hold up over time, so we probably will have to end up replacing that at some point in time down the road. So if you guys do get this machine, I do highly suggest grabbing one of those just to be on the safe side. Other than that, there's not too much else to go out about this machine. The bed leveling system does have the silicone bed mounts, so there still is a little bit ability to level the bed properly and get that good mesh. And then on top of that, with the bed, they decided to take everybody's upgrades from the Ender 5 and actually add, I think they're called cantilevers, if I'm not mistaken. So essentially there's two bars that hold up each side of the bed here that bolts onto the actual Z-axis to hold the entire bed and make it more structurally rigid. So essentially this is a fully upgraded Ender 5 in every way, shape, or form. With that being said, it does come with a quite hefty price tag. Last I checked on Creality's website, it was at $560 US. And on Amazon right now, and I will leave a link down in the description, it is an affiliate link, you guys use it or not, it is at $579 on Amazon as we are making this video. So do that with what you want. Get it or don't get it, that's completely up to you. Like I said, just be wary, there might be some hiccups with it because it is a newer machine. It does have a lot of newer parts from Creality, but after we had those slight hiccups, everything's been printing beautifully. And just to give you guys one more go at this, this does have a flex plate, and look at that print. this is my simplified 3D profile, and you know, the supports they just rip away like it's nothing. So I'm not going to bug you guys with the time of removing these supports, because it does take a little bit, because there is some supports in the little nooks and cranny to make sure that everything prints beautifully. But boom, perfect, love it. So can't ask for a better bed and a better profile than simplified 3D. So I hope you guys enjoyed the review. That's pretty much all I got to say on the Creality Ender 5 S1. Again, if you guys are interested in purchasing one, I will leave an affiliate link down for at least Amazon down in the description there. If you guys got any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down below, and I will try and answer them as best as I can. And if you guys aren't following, liking this video, sharing it out, please do so. That would be the greatest thing. My goal is to try and get as many subscribers as I possibly can for 2023, and your help is much appreciated on that. So, with that, I'll leave you guys be. Till next time, happy printing.